Welcome, everyone. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, from the Prime Global community. It's an immense pleasure for me to welcome you all to the PGS Talks number 4, Time for Inclusive Responsible Management Education, bringing the student voice. Today, on the stage, we have a stellar guest speaker, Debbie Haski-Leventhal, a professor of the management at the Macquarie Business School in Australia, and an expert on corporate social responsibility, purpose, and responsible management education. Together with Principles for Responsible Management Education, PRIME, Debbie conducted international studies on business students around the world and their attitudes towards responsible management. She is a TED speaker and a public speaker on purpose and social responsibility. She has published over 60 academic papers, and her work was covered by media, including the New York Times here in New York. Haski-Leventhal is also the author of 3 books, Strategic CSR, a holistic approach to responsible and sustainable business, the PurposeDriven University, and Employee Engagement in Corporate Social Responsibility. And great news, extra, her new book, Meaningfulness, will come out next year with Simon and Schuster. So, Professor Debbie, thank you so much for sharing your time with us, for accepting our invitation. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure it is to be here. I'm really delighted to be talking to students, with students today about responsible management education and how we need to include the voice of the students so it becomes more inclusive RME, responsible management education. What I'd like to do with you today is talk about the idea that I developed around the PurposeDriven University, how I came to develop this idea, what was the role of students in helping me to develop this idea, and what students are doing in this area so that we can move forward with responsible management education, being more inclusive of the students' voices. So I want to start by sharing with you some Google search results. And a few years ago, I was invited by Cologne Business School to talk about responsible management education. And as I was preparing my presentation, I thought it would be really cool to look at the top Google search results on universities are. Yet what I found shocked me a little bit. And this is what came out when you looked at universities are. Businesses dying, failing, scams, they're just corporations, a joke, useless, and of course, hostile to geniuses. And of course, no university wants to be positioned as such, because what we see here is the public opinion of us as institutions of higher education, because we focus too much on ranking and research impact instead of really looking at our role in society. And so looking at these search results, I think we need to change urgently and profoundly. And we can't do that without our number one stakeholder group, which are the students. There is no university in the world which can operate without its students. So that led me to go back and think about my story as I started my journey in higher education. And I was just a student of philosophy. And when I started my first degree, I had no financial support, and I had to find innovative ways to make money in order to even buy food. And so I started typing students' assignments and cleaning houses and cleaning offices and did whatever I could to survive. But what I did next completely changed my life, even though it was just an extracurricular activity. I came from Israel, and there they have a huge project called Perach, which means a flower. And university students all around all the universities in Israel go and tutor children, usually from disadvantaged background. And in return, you get half your tuition fee waived, which I desperately needed. So I participated in this program. And I worked with this little boy for 1 year. And his teacher told me she was very worried about him because he was bullied a lot. And she thought, what would happen to him when he becomes a teenager, later a soldier in the Israeli Defense Forces. And I was really, really worried about him. But I felt like I made a difference in his life. I really changed his ability to create friends and succeed academically. So I loved it, and I volunteered for another year, and then I became the coordinator for the volunteers and later the vice manageress of the entire project. And I absolutely loved it. So I went and I did a master's degree in management of not-for-profits, later a PhD on volunteering. And that led me to where I am today because I am a professor of volunteering and corporate social responsibility. I focus on the pro-social behavior of individuals and corporations. And as a professor of CSR, I see companies that are doing amazing work. I see companies like Patagonia, so devoted to saving the planet that it actually asks consumers not to buy new products. Imagine a company telling consumers not to buy their products. Instead, they ask consumers to reuse, repair, recycle, reduce. I see companies like Ben & Jerry's who say, we are a company with a social mission. We just happen to make ice cream. CEOs like Paul Polman leading Unilever to another direction with his sustainable development plan, the sustainable living plan. And Paul Polman was also one of the engineers of the SDGs and the way that businesses help to achieve the SDGs. So you can see how business leaders can now completely shift the conversation around businesses. So when I looked at that, I started asking myself, what if? What if universities could also become such a force for good? What if we could utilize all our resources, our power, our amazing intellect to create a positive impact in society? What if we stop focusing so much on impact factors and instead look at social impact? What if we stop obsessing with how much our graduates make and look instead into the difference that they can make? So these thoughts I created into my TED Talk, which I delivered 3 years ago now. And I also wrote a book called the PurposeDriven University, which creates all these ideas around what is the purpose of higher education. And in the book, I talk a lot about the role of students and how they are helping to change the world. So if higher education leadership do not act upon these stakeholder expectations, students will show us the way. So to start talking about a purpose-driven university, I first looked at the word purpose and what it actually means. And purpose is the reason for which something was created or for which something exists. So everything around you, if you look around you, every object has a purpose. It was created for a reason, for a function. And when this object no longer serves this function, it is deemed broken. What about people? What is our purpose in this world? And how do we make sure that we live by our purpose so we don't feel broken? And so we need to try and find our purpose. No one is going to come knocking on our door with an envelope. Here is your life purpose. We need to start living a purposeful life as of today. And you can do it, as I explain in my next book, Meaningfulness, by understanding who you are, what you're good at, what is your passion, what is your talent, what are your skills, and tie all of them to creating a positive impact in the world. This is what we call impact purpose. So it's not just purpose like, you could think about the purpose of universities to educate students and create research, but it's not a unique impact purpose. It's what everyone does. Every university in the world does that. It's like breathing for a person. Obviously, we need to do that to survive, but that's not our purpose in life. And so we need to define our impact purpose, how we find purpose through making a difference in another person's lives, like this little boy I told you about all these years ago. So using all these ideas, my knowledge on CSR, I define the purpose-driven university as one that utilizes its resources, knowledge, talent, and people to continuously work with all its stakeholders, including the students, to benefit the communities and the environment in which it operates through research, education, and service. And so research, education, and service are not the goals of higher education any longer. They are the means to achieve the purpose of the university. And each university can define its purpose in terms of its history, why it was established, its relationship with stakeholders, and therefore define its role in the world. And so when I look at these universities, and I've done a lot of research for writing the book, I've discovered that a lot of them are no longer just interested in being the best in the world, #1 ranked in Financial Times or in Times Higher Education, but rather interested in being best for the world. How can we become a force for good? So universities like the University of Pennsylvania, that works very hard to bring out people from poverty, knowing very well that they could become tomorrow's students. It's like Stanford University, where not only do they have research centers around poverty and social innovation, but students actually get to work in the community by becoming impact investors. Universities in the global south, like SBJ IMR in India, that create spiritual development for their students, helping them to become the social change leaders of tomorrow. And here in Australia, UTS, which sees itself as an agent for social impact and social change, surrounding the idea of them being just a public organization and how they can help to transform communities through their education. So looking at the universities, I've started listing all of our stakeholders. As you can see, the #1 stakeholder group that I've mentioned are the students, because I strongly believe that the students, with all their passion and purpose, are the leaders of tomorrow, and we need to include them in the conversation. We cannot become a purpose-driven university, a purpose-driven organization, without taking into consideration, involving and integrating our #1 stakeholder group. And so looking at the students, there is a lot to be inspired by. We could see students creating organizations like Enactus, enabling them to become social entrepreneurs and change makers. Of course, the Prime Global Student Group, which creates opportunities for so many students to work together towards responsible management education. This is just an example that I like from Erasmus University, where the students create a sustainability hub, and they are working together to help achieve the SDGs. They actually created an escape room surrounding SDG 12. That's just like so cool. And that impact, and there are many others, I can't name them all, but there are many ways in which students gather, create power, and try to influence higher education bottom up. And so a few years ago, I've created a survey that I run with Prime, and I've ran it 4 times already. And in these 4 times, I've asked students about their attitudes and thoughts around responsible management education and CSR. And the responses of the students are really so encouraging, because you could see how business students, not social work students, but business students from all around the world care so deeply about these issues. One of the first things that I wanted to challenge was Archie Carroll's pyramid around the 4 responsibilities of a business, which he portrayed as a pyramid starting with financial first, followed by legal, ethical, and philanthropic. I've asked the students to rank the responsibilities of a business, and every single time I got this pyramid: ethical first, followed by legal, financial, social, environmental, and philanthropic. You see, business students now understand that the pyramid on the left means Enron. The pyramid on the right means doing the right thing by all your stakeholders as much as you can. We've also asked students, what do you expect from your business schools? And the responses were also astonishing. So about 80% of students think that all business students should study business ethics, environmental sustainability, CSR, and to learn more about the SDGs. If business schools only have that as an elective, a sideshow kind of program, then that's not good enough. We're failing our students if we don't do that. And last, which really got the attention of the media, as Paulo mentioned, the New York Times, we've asked students, how much would you be willing to forego of your future salary to work for a responsible employer? One that cares about employees, environmental sustainability, stakeholders, the environment and ethics, and also exhibit all four of these aspects. And I was so astonished that 95% of students were willing to forego some level of their salary, and 1 in 5 was willing to forego over 40% of their future salary to work for such employers. That is an amazing signal that the students are sending us as their higher education institutions and their future employers about what they care very deeply about. So before I finish, I want to take you back to two of the starting slides that I had today. Firstly, this little boy, I found him recently, and he's a manager of an IT company with 2 kids, and he still remembers me. The impact that you create, you don't always know what is going to be the ripple effect of it years later. The other thing was the Google search results, and instead of just finishing with all the doom and gloom of universities are hostile to geniuses, let's reimagine tomorrow that maybe 5-10 years from today, we're going to have different Google search results. Universities are purposeful, good for society, best for the world, and working with students to find their purpose. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and I'd love to connect via Twitter and LinkedIn to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Debbie. Thank you so much for such an insightful presentation. It's amazing to see how you connect the ideas and leave us with an inspiring and positive message. Thank you so much for accepting. And now I invite you all to join us in the last session from the Eastern Bloc to meet our new PGS regional leaders. See you all in the other Zoom room. Thank you, Debbie. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.